The League of Women Voters of Pocatello welcomes all of you to the forum this evening. It's featuring the candidates running for mayor of Chubbuck and for the Chubbuck City Council. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization which seeks to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates for any office at any level. Instead, it works to provide educational opportunities to the voting public to ensure a well-informed electorate. League is always open to new members, both men and women, and there are membership forms available should you be interested. The League of Women Voters, LWVP, is on Facebook. Anyone is welcome to comment on our posts, but please be aware that all posts must be relevant to League positions and will be monitored by our Facebook administrators. Except for authorized news organizations, no other videos are allowed. So please not only turn off your phones to avoid interrupting noise, but please do not video any part of this forum. Our National League of Women Voters procedures require that we inform you that no part of a League of Women Voters of Pocatello sponsored video production may be used in advertising or any way to promote a candidate or issue, nor can it be used in any format other than its entirety. And tonight our moderator is League member Margaret Gagnon, who will introduce our panel and describe the format for tonight's forum. And this candidate forum will be available for on-demand viewing at youtube.com Pocatello Community Media. The Pocatello League thanks Pocatello Community Media for televising our forums and public meetings, and League is also grateful to the city of Chubbuck for providing this meeting space. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We're really looking forward to this conversation. Over the next hour and a half, we'll have an opportunity to get to know the candidates for the Chubbuck mayoral and city council seat 2 races. What the process will be is that each candidate will go down from my right to my left and have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, their qualifications, their goals in running for office. And from that point forward, we'll take questions. There are League volunteers throughout the audience with note cards. If you'd like one now, just raise your hand, and at any point they'll come around, bring you pen, card, and pick up your questions, bring them up here. If we get duplicate questions or questions directed to a particular candidate, we make sure that it's for the full panel. We may rewrite questions if they require some consolidation of several, or if they need some rewriting, if there needs to be some clarity introduced. And we did receive some questions via email. We have a Facebook page, and you're able to submit at any time an email to the League. And none of those questions that we received ahead of time have been provided to any of the candidates. After the introductions, those responses to the questions will be a minute and a half. This is a little longer than the format that we had for Pocatello. We decided that the candidates, it's a little frustrating to try to answer in a minute. We're trying something new, but no rebuttal. So they'll have a minute and a half, and we'll go straight down. If they care to respond, to rebut, to give additional comments on a prior question, they can do that in the next open time, but I think you'll appreciate as an audience having them have kind of more succinct time periods. And then at the very end, we've increased their concluding remarks to 2 minutes, so that if they do want to do any kind of final rebuttals, they're able to do that as well at that time. We look very much forward to getting to know these candidates, and we welcome you. You can start writing your questions now. We will begin on my far right with the current incumbent mayor of the city of Chubbuck, Kevin England.
Thank you, Margaret. I certainly want to start by saying thank you to you and to the league for providing this opportunity. You do a wonderful work in making sure that the word gets out there and people have the opportunity to be involved in this process, which is really an important thing to do. I'm grateful for the opportunity to run, to serve this community. I've really appreciated my opportunity to serve during the last 4 years, and it's been a real growing experience. Let me just give you a little history of myself. I've been a citizen of this town for a little over 30 years. I've lived in the community my whole life, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have to give back to this community. I raised my family here of 6 children. I have a couple of children who live here and I have grandkids that live here. And that's what gives me a great desire. That's part of what gives me a great desire to serve this community. I have been very involved behind the scenes for most of my life, but there came a point in time when my children were raised and I had the opportunity to have more time, and so I determined that I'd run for the Chubbuck City Council. That was a wonderful experience. I had the opportunity to serve there for 4 years. I served as the council president for a couple of years, and that was a very growing experience. And then at the end of that time, I decided to run for mayor. And these last 4 years have been wonderful. It was like drinking from a fire hose right at first. There's a lot that needs to be understood that you think you know and you really don't. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that's been given me. I believe that Chubbuck is going in a great place right now. I really do. We have some good things happening. I believe that I've had some training that has been provided for me, and that has made it so that I can do a good job of serving you for another 4 years. So I would ask for your support for another term. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate for mayor is Hank Gardner.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I would echo my thanks to those who are putting this on. I also want to take a minute and thank my wife for supporting me. She's not here. She's at home with some sick kids, but I just wanted to make sure that she was recognized. I started out studying business management, and after leaving college, had some success in the private industry for several years before I decided it was time to try my hand at one of my lifelong interests, which was law enforcement. I did that for just over 7 years, had some success there. I was Officer of the Year, I was promoted to Sergeant. I spent about half of that time here serving the city of Chubbuck, and in that time I'm a longtime citizen of Chubbuck, but I became aware of some of the cracks that are in the foundation of our city, and what I realized is that this community is such a great place to live by virtue of its people. It really is the good people in this community that make it what it is. And I think that the government our local government here owes them a debt. And I can't help but think that we can do better in repaying them for all the good that they do. And so that's why I'm here. I think that I can take my business management experience in my time as a city employee and apply that to making some positive changes to the way we do business here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final candidate for mayor is Nikki Taysom.
Hi, thank you very much for having me here. Appreciate it. And thank you especially everyone for coming. This is one thing I've been trying to do since I've moved to Chubbuck, is bring we the people together as one nation under God and indivisible in order to form a more perfect union. We the people establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity under our Constitution, which is the supreme law of this land. And I've been attending meetings here in Chubbuck City Council since 2013 and Pocatello since 2011. I've also been at county meetings because that's how I was raised. I was raised by parents who spent their entire adult lives in public service in Alaska, where I was born and raised. I moved out here when I was 29. I have about 8 years of college, formal college in business, health education, emergency medicine, emergency preparedness, self-reliance type things, which is an extension of how I was raised. And that's where I'm coming from, and my goal here is to restore those principles of what we are and what Heavenly Father established this land to be. The Constitution is priceless to me. My liberty is priceless to me. I have a great interest especially, and I've worked with children and youth my whole entire adult life for their safety and well-being, their education, their promise, and what we're handing them is not good. We've recently had some shootings here. There's a drug problem. There's extreme safety issues, and I am a voice for children. Again, I've been a uniter of people for a long time. Until we come together as one, under the basic principles of the foundation of this nation, we won't be united. And so, with those principles involved in our Constitution states, as one nation under God and indivisible, in order to form a more perfect union, that's where I stand, in the name of Jesus the Christ.
Thank you. Our first candidate for the City Council seat number 2 is Josh Ellis.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this, and thank you for coming to listen to us for an hour and a half. I'm sure there's some cat videos on Facebook or baseball game, perhaps something that might be a little more entertaining, but I appreciate that you're here. So a little bit of background on myself. I just turned 42. I moved to Chubbuck when I was 10 years old. I moved onto Moses Street. I remember distinctly riding my bike to and from Hawthorne Junior High on Hawthorne Road. Pretty much grew up here. I'm the oldest of 6 children. I'm the only one that's left in the Pocatello Valley. All of my siblings have chosen to leave the area, and typically it's been for employment opportunities. So if you know me and you wonder why I run or why I want to run and why I want to be involved, my father's been a builder and a developer. He's built multiple subdivisions here in the city. It kind of seemed like a natural tendency to try to help grow the city and make it a place where I could stay and where my kids could stay, where my kids could grow up and where my kids could live. I believe if you look at my record and the things that I've done over the last 4 years, that I've accomplished those things. We've looked forward to the future. We've tried to hold our taxes flat. We've tried to improve the services for the citizens of Chubbuck. I think if you look at the Yellowstone corridor, I think even without the interchange already having happened, I think you've seen some great things happen over the last 4 years. I ask for your vote again so that I can continue to work for you in improving the services that we have. Chubbuck's challenges and advantages are distinctly different from those of Pocatello, and I think that I can work for you in improving that. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final candidate for seat 2 of the City Council is Roger Hernandez.
Oh, thank you. Hello, I'm Roger Hernandez. I've been a citizen of actually Chubbuck for the last 17, 18 years, actually almost 20 years, really. It depends on the job as I had, according to my job, excuse me. I'm married, I have 4 wonderful kids, 2 grandsons, love those kids. Like Mr. Ellis, we both love to serve. I know I love to serve, that's all I volunteered for a lot of stuff, the homeless stand down, Paint Fest, and even actually at Highland. I help out there. I retired about 4 years ago from the military. After that, I'm a partner in one of the businesses here in town, a small gym. We do a lot of strength and conditioning, for lack of better words. So if you guys want some of that action, come on down. Anyway, so, sorry. But anyway, I mean, my background is, I've been a troubleshooter for the military most of my career. Wherever there was a trouble spot, they usually sent me. I ended up fixing a lot of problem areas, if you will, or bringing them up to snuff. And sorry, it's always one guy. But anyway, but in doing those duties, I also learned a lot about finance, budgets, how to manage people, how to lead people, how to work with people, and most importantly, how to listen to people. Because not everybody knows everything. The only person that does is probably about an infinite, a few pay grades above our heads. So, and I think a lot of it is listening. Yes, we have a great opportunity right now with the interchange, with the new stake center moving up. Chubbuck is in the middle of a growth spurt. It really is. And the best way to do it is to make sure that we have people who are listening to everybody here in town, that we have the right guidance, the right ideas, and make sure that everything is taken care of. And I would appreciate your vote November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin now with responses to questions. These are 1.5 minute responses, and we alternate who goes first. So this first question will go to Mr. Gardner, And just a reminder, anyone in the audience with questions, please go ahead and you can either bring them over to the side or wave your hand around and we'll come and get them from you. The question is regarding tax increment financing and property tax exemption. So they are both primary tools for local governments to use for economic development. How do you feel about how they're being used today in Chubbuck, and how should they be used in the future in the city?
I can't speak much to the TIF districts, but in regard to the property exemption, I believe that that does not incentivize people to develop, to upgrade their property where it's capped. I think that generally speaking, if we could reduce levies and rely on a better use of the TIF districts, that it would serve us well. I will take this opportunity to simply say that I'm being paid good money to focus on somebody else's business right now, not the city's. I own my own business as well, and I would just hope that as a citizen, I want to hear good informed answers from our elected officials currently and hold them accountable for the time that they should have been spending on these problems, whereas they are currently being paid to deal with them. If I am elected, I will make that my priority to learn more about these things and to find better solutions, again, with my focus being the citizens and their well-being.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
One of the big things that I am very much opposed to are property taxes, period. They do violate constitutional law, and if they're unequal, you should be equal in everyone. And so, according to constitutional law, we develop a budget with projects included and take a census and divide the cost of that equally. And if we, the people, don't approve that budget or what those expenses are, then we go back to the drawing board until everybody is comfortable with what they can afford and what they want. I am against exemptions because they're unequal. There are those who may be uneducated in how those work or don't use it or are aware of how those work. There's rental properties, so people in those facilities don't have really a voice of how those taxes are governed, but they pay the rent. TIF districts I'm highly opposed to. Again, it's totally unequal. It's favoring big corporations who have a lot bigger source of funds to work from, while we have local people who want to expand business, want to hire more people, and make this town better. They're our foundation, yet they do not have that opportunity, and in fact end up paying for the TIF districts. For instance, Amy's, they came here with a TIF district benefit. Last year, the city of Pocatello residents and businesses ended up paying over $28 million in difference because that's what they were differing from Hines per the Bannock County treasurer. And so that's why some of the smaller businesses closed in Pocatello last year and some people lost their properties.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
There are currently 2 TIF districts in the city of Chubbuck. The most recent one being at the Pine Ridge Mall. General Growth Properties owned that for probably 20 to 30 years before it changed hands to the current group. There was little to no investment or rehabilitation in the mall. General Growth Properties actually owned the one up in Idaho Falls as well, and so oftentimes we would see that they would have a preference to the Idaho Falls area. In the last 2 years, the city of Chubbuck has created a TIF district for the mall. What you've seen is that we've added multiple different establishments there. The TIF district just simply freezes the tax rate and then encourages investment. Once that investment has happened, you can now look at the green tea. That is not in a TIF district. That is new money that is now available to the city of Chubbuck and New Growth, where Freddy's Custard is at, where Costa Vida has just relocated to. All of that is now available for the city of Chubbuck. We have another TIF district that will expire in 2022. The challenge with that is once that expires, the city of Chubbuck's general budget will grow by $1 million. That sounds great, except for the fact that we'll lose $1 million. The county currently isn't giving us any money to control or improve our roads, and there are other entities that aren't contributing to that. So it is a vital tool for the city of Chubbuck to be able to improve services.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. The TIF districts are actually a very brilliant idea that have been around for quite a while. For example, Eau Claire, Minnesota, they use a TIF district and it's called a confluence. And I agree with Mr. Ellis, yes. They're vital, they're important for revitalization and actually growth as well. If we go back to the Eau Claire example with the confluence, not very familiar with the geography, but there's 3 rivers. They have riverfront property. The TIF district was set up to have a private company come in. They build a $10 million facility, and from that alone, you had an increase of revenue overall. Yes, I do like the idea of the TIF districts, but they have to be done judiciously. And also, if we use the example of the Amy's facility, you also have to do within the means of the law as well. I mean, there's a lot to it, and I think, again, if we use them judiciously, particularly with like the mall that needed to be revitalized, and hopefully we don't have other areas that are like that. But if we do, we can always use them. Granted, most of the entities that live off of these the levies and so forth, they won't necessarily die from them or suffer too much from them, but you do have a reinvestment into the community. That's what these are for, and I am for it. Thank you.
Thank you. With the final response on this question, Mayor England?
Thank you very much. That's an interesting question because Josh handled the TIF district answer very well. Let me just add to that the TIF district is overseen by the Chubbuck Development Authority. We have a couple of those members on that authority board sitting here tonight. They do a wonderful job of making sure those monies are used appropriately to bless this city. And it's a wonderful program, it really is. When those TIF districts retire, it brings more money into the city of Chubbuck, and it's a wonderful blessing. But during the time those TIF districts are open, there's work that's done that couldn't be done otherwise. Could I say Dell Road, Whitaker Road, Stewart Subdivision, Country Acres? None of that could be done without the TIF district. The second TIF district that's with the mall is showing what it's able to do. And again, once that TIF district has run its purpose, it will be retired and those monies will come back to the city. It'll be a true blessing. Also, we haven't really dealt well with the property tax exemption. That's actually not a city thing. That actually is overseen by the county. But our county leads out in this. Let me give you one example. On semiconductor, how important are they to our community? Without those tax exemptions, we wouldn't have on semiconductor. I've been in their offices and talked to them. Our county does a good job. This was talked about in the legislature last year, and let me tell you how important it was to the legislature. As they redid this law, 95% of the House voted for this, 100% of the Senate voted for it. It's really important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. This question will go first to Ms. Taysom. There were many questions about qualifications, and so the candidates did respond in their 2-minute introduction about their personal background and qualifications, but because there's such deep concern and interest in that, we'll ask the candidates to respond very specifically to experiences and skills that they have related to the position they're looking for. And the question is this. The city of Chubbuck has over $31 million in assets, a $17 million budget, and over 120 employees serving in fire, police, public works, city clerk, and administrative departments. What specific skills, experience, and education do you have to effectively manage an organization of this size and complexity? Start.
I've never managed something that big. I have managed, my ex-husband and I had a construction business in Alaska that I was the bookkeeper for. And while we were married, we were totally out of debt and had $150,000 cash in the bank. I have managed employees, I've managed apartment complexes. I have been on my own for quite a while, since 2006. And a lot of you see me work around town. You see me wearing the same kind of clothes. I was taught to be self-reliant. I'm not someone who will depend on the government to bail me out of something. My goal is to restore those principles that this country was founded on. It's not the government's job to provide benefits for employees, because that's unequal. I shouldn't have to pay for someone else's retirement or their vacation. They earn that themselves with a just wage. To me, that's socialism, to pay benefits. There are other costs in the city's budget that definitely need to be addressed. There's a lot of misuse of funds, including in regards to acquisition of equipment. It's not right to take my tax dollar or yours to buy landscape equipment when we have people in our own town in that business who have that equipment. It should be contracted out to local. Same thing with streets, same thing with...
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
I graduated from Idaho State University with a bachelor's in business administration. After I graduated, during that time, I started working at, it wasn't on semiconductor at the time, it was AMI. I worked a night shift while I put myself through school. I might have slept through a couple of chemistry classes after I worked the night shift. Chemistry was not my favorite subject. But as I had that opportunity and as I started my career working for corporate America, I then transferred to Convergys when they came into town. I worked my way up through the company and was a supervisor and essentially what they call an operations manager. I managed over 100 employees. I was sent to multiple sites within the United States as far as training them, dealing with people and personnel. If you look at what I've done during my time on the council, there's only a couple of things that you can do in the city council as far as determining the budget, and that's setting the levy. We've tried to hold the levy flat, and any new money that's come into the city has been from new additional growth or from increased tax valuations. With that, there's a couple of things that we've done. We've asked our departments to get leaner and meaner, to do more with less. And I think as you look at the improvements that you've seen, as you look at the road maintenance that we've done, that was a $30,000 budget. It's now over $250,000 on a 7-year plan. I think that goes to show that I have the ability to work with those budgets.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. I'm Roger. Actually, my work experience, it varies, actually. Again, I've worked in the military, particularly the Idaho Army National Guard, for probably the last 17 years before I retired. In that time frame, I worked in departments where, from the local level to the state level, where we managed multi-million-dollar budgets, where I had to work with other people, other entities within those budgets, and make sure they met their deadlines, they met budget requirements, and and make sure that they didn't go over. Again, working with colonels and sergeant majors, it's kind of a big ego trip. Got to learn how to deal with people in authority, a lot of pride. And aside from that, I've worked like I said, look, excuse me, I am having an issue today. But anyway, so multi-million-dollar budgets. I've done them, been there, done that, making sure I've led people. We put people to deployments, moved whole battalions, about 500 people from here halfway across the world. And I was responsible for making sure those movements were done, making sure those people were taken care of, making sure your people were trained. All these things help with the same at the local level as well. Because if your people are not trained, again, like Mr. Ellis was saying, you can always do better, always. And I believe that. And the best way to do that is to make sure your people are trained and making sure you listen to the people around you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor England?
You know, it's an interesting thing when you start talking about qualifications to run for office, because there's a lot of things that you can do to provide leadership in a community. But I think probably the first thing that comes to my mind as far as my own preparation, I ran my own business for 35 years, a very successful business, and I was over many of budgets that were well over $1 million and had the opportunity to understand how all of those things work. But all of that kind of pales in comparison to the last 4 years. I believe that has qualified me for this job in ways that I could have not done otherwise. One of my heroes in this community, in this state, is J.R. Simplot. And he made a statement years ago when I was at a seminar that he put on. He said, a smart man that manages a business will find good people, he'll hire them, and then he'll get out of their way. Then he manages from afar. And I remember writing that down and remember thinking, that's smart. You need to understand that. Well, with a city, no one man's an island. No one man or woman can do this by themselves. You need to have good department heads. And in turn, they need to be working with each of those people in those departments to make sure they know their job and that they're doing their job. And so the mayor's job is to make sure all of that comes together. I have a staff, and I work with that staff every week, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. Again, that's the most important qualification I have, is I've served for 4 years, and the first 2 years were like drinking from a fire hose. I've learned a lot. I'd like to keep those things going.
Thank you. The final response on this question is from Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, thank you. Running the city is a diverse operation. I believe that I have a diverse enough background that qualifies me well. Again, like I stated, I studied business management. My first job, I worked my way up to management in a multi-million-dollar company in the construction field. While I was going to school, I never once incurred any student loans. I would always pay for my school as I went because that was a philosophy that my parents taught me. I worked in the construction industry and also as a certified mechanic, which, I mean, the city has a large maintenance facility. They also obviously are in the construction realm. Also, my time in law enforcement, I believe, is invaluable. It's the largest department in the city. It really allowed me the opportunity to be on the ground and close to the citizens. When it comes to multi-million-dollar budgets, again, I work as an operations manager for a multi-million-dollar company. I report directly to the CEO. I oversee several departments such as billing, customer service, fulfillment, marketing. I have to comment on one of the things that Mayor England said, you know, the concept of managing from afar. I believe that he's been managing from too far away and has lost sight of some of the things going on in his own city. Again, to speak to the owning your own business thing, I've also done that for the last 7 years. Law enforcement's one of the things that allowed me to do that.
Thank you.
This next question will go first to Councilman Ellis. With all of the projected growth in the area, what are your plans for ensuring adequate police and fire services?
We've already started to look at that. Over the last couple of years, we've added I want to say it's 3 firefighters, and we've added two different policemen. As we continue to see the growth and where the growth happens, that will dictate the placement of where we need to look at an additional fire station. Much of our need is based off of where our residents live. With the new interchange coming in, that will dictate, is the growth pattern going to change? Is it going to continue to move west towards Philbin, or is it now going to move towards the east? As we look at the call volume and we look at the areas that those calls come in, we'll be able to determine how that happens. Within our current budgets, we've already set aside money within this last budget session to look at those expansion needs. It will take multiple years for the growth to happen. The interchange won't be done until the end of next year, and then there's still some time that's going to be needed to build the infrastructure and see the growth. But we've already put some things in place to start planning for that growth and to prepare for it. We've actually purchased ground for multiple sites so that whether it goes to the west or to the east, the city of Chubbuck has the ground to be able to build an additional fire station, and or we've actually looked at a combination of a police and a fire station.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Well, as any other plan, as with any future development, you have to lay down the frameworks. You have to lay down the foundations, regardless of whether it be fire, police, and so forth. You also have to make sure that, again, with the interchange being east of us, normal growth in most cities is northeast. I mean, you have to have multiple plans, contingency plans, to make sure that you know that if it goes this direction, you already got a foundation laid down, or if it goes in that direction, you got the foundation laid down, already ready to go. And part of it is, again, it's not just having a near-term or a short-term, but a long-term plan for all these situations. I mean, granted, you can't account for all situations, but you can go for a general direction. Like shooting artillery is in that direction, so we'll go that direction or in that direction, but you always have to have a plan. And that's one of them, is laying down the foundations. Again, whether it be the manpower that you need, the properties that we need, you also have to make sure you're saving for these requirements as they come along. And that's one of the things that I believe we should be doing, if not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor England?
You know, those are two services that are very vital to a city. The safety of a city becomes something that's it's vital to every one of the citizens. And so it's something that by far and away has a priority as you look at what you're doing in a city. I have had the opportunity, as I worked with our fire and police department, to sit with them and talk about the needs. There certainly are needs, and you know, it's interesting because a lot of that depends on perspective. Because I also have people come into the office and tell me they feel like we have too many firemen and too many policemen. And much of it has to do with what their personal experience has been. I guarantee it, when your house is on fire, you don't have enough firemen. I don't care how many you have. But I think the city has done a very good job of looking at what our future needs are going to be and trying to provide for that future need. Again, as Councilman Ellis has pointed out, we have purchased properties with the intent of recognizing there are going to be areas that are going to need to be serviced better. We've done some studies to make sure we understand what the absolute needs of this community are right now. Many of you are going to be asked to participate with some citizen surveys to come back and help us understand what you see those needs to be. And that'll all be part of making that plan happen. But I believe we're in a good place right now, and I believe that going forward, as the city grows, we are in a place to make sure that we have the amount of firemen and policemen that we need.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
I disagree. I don't think we're in a great place right now. Frankly, working with the police department, you know, there were some challenges, and I don't think that the mayor's listened to the needs. We can talk about the future all we want, but let's just be real for a minute. If we're not in a good place now, why even bother talking about the future? It's just going to be a repeating pattern of where we've been. The fire department, the police department, the two largest departments within the city have had a lot of challenges, a lot of frustrations. Personally, I know that the city's hired, by my rough estimates, over $500,000 worth of salaried people in office settings. I would have liked to see those resources go to the more immediate needs. I think that ambulance service should definitely be a part of Chubbuck yesterday. If anybody has a heart attack in this room right now, I hope that there's not rush hour traffic as the ambulance tries to get across I-86.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
Again, I think that the first thing we need to do is address the causes of what's causing us to need more police and more fire people. Like I said, I was raised in Alaska. We're taught to be independent, and that's what I plan on re-encouraging and re-inspiring, is take responsibility for yourself. I served with the Boy Scouts of America for 20 years as a PTA president. I was a foster mother. And as I've mentioned, not hiring more police has solved anything here. We've had increased shootings, we've had increased drug problems. There's more, I'm just being honest, corruption in our own government here. And that's not going to solve the issue. I was in 5th grade when they introduced the DARE type program. Drug use has increased under the education of DARE, because children are taught where to get drugs, how to use drugs, how to make even syringes to use drugs. The way to stop crime is to stop the cause of the crime. Big Ag, phosphorus, meth, Asian, Middle East, India, heroin. We have 1030 curfews for little children up to 15 years old. I see children that young outside all the time by themselves because they don't want to go home to what's there. And so until we, as a people, ensure our own domestic tranquility, I support and totally am grateful for our peace officers. We have peace officers in America, not police. I'm grateful for fire. My brother's a captain in Alaska.
Thank you.
This next question goes first to Mr. Hernandez. How do you feel about requiring new subdivisions to provide a local park area?
It's an interesting question. It all depends. I think so far the city has done a great job with the parks that we have had, the subdivisions. I think it does add a little bit of beautification to the city and to the general areas. I mean, the only thing I worry about is also the maintenance of these parks as well. As long as they're being maintained and we have the resources to maintain them, I don't see a problem with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor England?
I'd just like to take the first second to just respond to Mr. Gardner. He's certainly entitled to his opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts. I've had policemen and firemen in my office, and they've told me things are doing very well. And so I guess what I'm saying is, he was a police officer here for 3 years while I served as the mayor. He never came and talked to me. I've talked to this man once, and it's because I promoted the discussion. And it seems to me like if he was having the kind of problems he's saying he is, he should have come in and talked to me, and he didn't. So the facts just don't back up what he's saying. I will stand by Chief Sevier till the cows come home. He retires at the end of this year. He's a good man. He's a police officer for 40 years. He's done this city wonderful things, and he's a great, great police chief. As far as parks, you need to understand that the city had a vision a number of years ago that it's called for small neighborhood parks. That's why that ordinance sits the way it is. We are looking at that right now to change that vision. We're looking more towards destination parks. Now, how those are going to be paid for, that's going to have to be part of the discussion. That will be part of the public discussion on how we want to go forward with that. But that's the reason it's happened in the past. It's part of an ordinance. It really isn't something that we can or can't do. By ordinance, we're required to do it. And that's probably going to change.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
In regard to parks, there's a lot of little micro parks that these developers are donating to the city, which frankly are more of a burden than they are a benefit. I'd like to see that be done away with. If these communities want parks, then I would suggest that we look maybe at homeowners associations that will foot the cost of keeping up these parks. Otherwise, frankly, I'd say we move away from it and invest in parks such as Stewart Park, Cotown Park, and the like that have a lot more traffic and benefit to the community. In regard to what Mayor England just said, this is a let me first say this. Mayor England's a good man. I honestly believe that. I also believe that Chief Sevier is a good man. I am 100% sincere when I say that, but just because you're a good person doesn't make you good at your job. This is an excerpt from an email to maybe answer your question from Chief Sevier to one of the officers. I would suggest that you not press your luck here. You could get sideways with me real quick by jumping the chain of command and taking it upon yourself to approach the mayor. So, there you have it. That's probably why people weren't super eager to go and talk to Mayor England. And frankly, if he was more in tune to what was going on and searching out answers himself, that wouldn't be necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Taysom.
Could you read the question?
Sure. The question is, do you support the development of, from memory, parks? How do you feel about requiring new subdivisions to provide a local park area?
I'm not sure why that question's there. The city has changed their ordinance from requiring parks. It can still be done, but they've implemented impact fees in lieu of the parks because most of those pieces were too small. People weren't using them, and the city had to maintain them. So I don't agree with that. I think there needs to be some green area around that because that brings in a peaceful spirit. It includes habitat for wildlife, which makes it a more, uplifting town. In terms of maintenance, that needs to be contracted out to private. In Alaska, we even contracted out the snow plowing. None of that is the government's job. They contract it out. We don't want to have to pay for all this massive equipment, including road construction equipment. The Whitaker Park and, the Whitaker Road and Sturt Road projects went to DePatco, yet they made different things that they had to come back and repair at extra cost. There were people getting new sidewalks and new parking areas that some of us had to pay for. The splash pad was $400,000 for a glorified sprinkler system that can only be used about 3 months out of the year. And that was given to a Utah corporation. And so I have a big problem with what's going on with parks here and with roads. And I'm all for, we have local people here ready to do the work. They shouldn't be coming from California or Utah or Washington.
Thank you. The final response on this question is with Councilman Ellis.
When the first ordinance was created, things were a little different. So let's go back to my time on Moses Street. As soon as I could get my chores done and my mom would let me get out of the house, I would go to Bicentennial Park. And as long as we could get 3 kids, we would play shadow ball, hot box, any number of things until the sun went down or until my mom called me home. I don't think my wife will let me let my kids go to the park unattended for that long right now. So back then it was probably a great idea to have all of these small parks in these areas. Things have changed. Generally, people are asking for more of a destination park. The TIF district actually helped create and fund the revitalization of Stewart Park. So if you're a grandparent or you're a parent and you don't want to have to spend any money and you want to take your kids or your grandkids to the library and then spend some time at the splash pad, that's a great place to go. That's what we've been hearing, that people want those amenities. They go to other areas and they see them and they want to know why we can't have those here. We can have those here, and we've started to create them.
Thank you. This question will go first to Mayor England. So this is with reference to the recent homicide and drive-by shooting. How would you address the crime rate in the city? How could you reduce the incidence of violent crime in the city?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I just have to say one more thing, and I couldn't agree more. I believe that Hank is a good man. I said so to him publicly, and I've posted as such, and I believe that. But we have several of Chubbuck's finest sitting here tonight, and I'd suggest if you want to find out how they're doing and how they feel about how the city is, you ask them. I think enough would be said. You know, it's awful when crime comes. It is. It's an awful thing. I hate to see it. These instances that I am aware of have been made by anger. Anger's an awful thing. I'm not sure what you do about that. One of the challenges that the law enforcement community has made me aware of is that we've become a drug corridor because we have states neighboring us who have legalized what they call a gateway drug, and it's bringing much more drug traffic into our area. We're going to have to address that, and it is being addressed at this point in time. Our police have done a good job of getting involved with some federal programs that are going to bring extra federal dollars here so that we'll have better ways to enforce some of the laws. But as far as taking care of folks who are going to do something in that kind of a fit of anger, there's not a lot we can do about it other than the society recognize that we've gone a long ways from being neighborly and good to one another. The situation is such that it really couldn't have been helped. There wasn't anything that this city or any of this community did to bring that on. It's something we'll need to be much more aware of. I hate to see it in our sweet little community.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
The mayor is correct that, you know, we can't control the actions of people. That's certainly true, but what we can control is how we run our police department. And quite frankly, let me say this. I have no axe to grind. I have no sour grapes over my time here. But I am a citizen of this community, and I have some very serious concerns. If you have an administration that wants to mitigate the risk that is law enforcement by choosing not to be proactive, they're wrong. Quite frankly, I've heard direct statements by those sitting in this room that we are not a drug enforcement agency. We have no interest in known drug houses. We will not go get a warrant, and we will not kick down that door because it is too dangerous. That is a serious, serious problem. If Chubbuck's a great place to live and do business, but the problem is the word's out, and criminals feel the same way. You can get into a pursuit right now, and our administration will call it off. Don't pursue people. Well, the word's out. If you want to run from the police, do it in Chubbuck. They won't chase you because it's too risky. There's too much liability in that. It is a risky and dangerous business, but it needs dealt with.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
The way to reduce crime or any problem is to address and stop what's causing it. We have people in this town in the Whitaker trailers that don't even have enough money to pay for their flat water fee of $103 a month. They are losing their jobs because the people can't afford paying for the TIF districts and the benefits and the nonprofits and everything else that other people are getting free rides on. We have alcohol, porn, satanic violent media, vape, tobacco, lottery tickets. I see children being taught how to use the lottery machines in the grocery stores. That's contributing to the delinquency of minors, yet it's okay. like I mentioned, you talk to a meth person, they'll tell you right now the phosphorus comes from Big Ag. Where's the Big Ag mines at? Pocatello, Soda Springs area. Where's our biggest meth problems? Southeast Idaho. I lived in Missouri for a year, meth capital of the United States of America. Who's based there? Big Ag Monsanto. Where does heroin produced? Asia, the Middle East, Mexico, India. Who's teaching right here, being taught at ISU? I'm being sincere. I love everyone. I'm addressing the problem. Until we're ready to be honest and decide whether we want the money or we want health and safety and prosperity. That's the choice. It's coming up out of Utah. The gateway drug, my education is in health. In 1992, the gateway drug was caffeine. That's what starts this program. We have Coke right here. Coke is almost the equivalent of liquid meth by the ingredients.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
I received several calls on the recent shootings and the activity, and then last night there was an alert that went out and there was some definite concern. So the first one was a marijuana deal gone bad. They met at Walmart and then it went over to the Branson area. That one was drug related for less than $400 was the amount. The shooting that happened at the convenience store was purely domestic. It was a fight between two co-workers, and it was unfortunate that somebody had a concealed weapons permit, and from the information I've gathered, it seemed more like they should just have their argument and agree to disagree and move on, and so it's unfortunate. I don't know that you can regulate that. And if a politician is trying to promise you that they're going to be able to regulate and move away all of the difficult things in the world, it might make you feel good, but I don't know that that's a possibility. Last night's issue dealt with something that started in Fort Hall and dealt with expired license plates. There are some things that we need to be doing, and we are looking at those things. If you look at the prison expansion that the county is asking for, the critical piece to that is they're looking for treatment beds. They're looking for trying to deal with the issues and not just lock people up. So although we don't have all the answers, I do think we're trying to look and find a solution.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Could you repeat the question again, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I sure can. Sorry. So with regard to the recent homicide and drive-by shooting, how would you address crime rate in the city?
Well, you can't fix stupid, first and foremost. Everything, those last incidents that we've had were either anger or, like you were saying, drug deal gone bad. There's no way to regulate human emotion, plain and simple. The most you can do is probably try to avert it at the individual level. That's a moral core. Simple as that. There's no sugarcoating that one. The other one is probably try to enforce, and enforcement with punishment on those levels. I think part of the problem is if we do have that issue of not chasing down a criminal, for lack of better words, then when I was talking with Sheriff Nielsen, they have a great relationship with all the counties around us. They will go, their SWAT teams will go help each other out. And part of the problem may be that whether it be the Fort Hall, us, county, state, or maybe Pokey PDs are not working with each other. I think they should be working with each other as far as enforcement side of the house is concerned. Communication is always vital. It really is. And part of, excuse me. And again, it's just a matter of helping each other out, and maybe us as individuals helping each other out as well. Again, you can't fix stupid. People are going to do dumb things. You can't regulate that, but you can help with everybody else. Being neighborly like we are, we should be able to help each other. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you. This question goes first to Mr. Gardner. With the development of the Northgate interchange, what challenges and opportunities does Chubbuck face, and how would you address them?
Well, I certainly think there are opportunities. I mean, we've been hearing now for some time of all the great and wonderful things that this is going to bring to the community, but here's my concern. You know, it's always nice for politicians to pat themselves on their back when something like this comes up, and you know, hey, good job, here's a benchmark for us. But here's the reality. Nobody's talking anymore about the Knutson development. You know, it's the shortcut to nowhere. And don't get me wrong, I love taking that shortcut, but it was an expensive investment on the city's part for a sure thing that didn't pan out. So we can, you know, have all the faith and confidence in this project working, but the fact of the matter is we can't control everything. So my biggest concern is that we're not talking about the negatives that will come with this. I'm concerned that we're looking so far ahead that we're forgetting about the people around us. Let's take care of the citizens. Let's focus on prosperity. If we can be the most prosperous city, which I believe this city has the potential to do, great things will happen inherently. It will be tempered, measured, sustainable growth. It won't be something like this that has the potential to run amok and people are going to get left along the wayside.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
We definitely, development's going to happen. The goal is to have it be in a measured way. It's not going to happen by making that a big TIF district up there, which is what it's been approved for. It's also about water control with the water that's available there. And it's also going to be more government control of property and ownership or corporate, doing away with the little local guys. I feel the same thing about Knutson. The city's put in all this money for all the sewers, water. They're going to be upgrading the entire water system around here to control water to homes and small businesses for corporate. That's public record. Come to the meetings. And depending on what company comes in there, I've heard Google, there's all kinds of different gossip. We need to monitor what is going in there. I mean, we have got so much pollution around here that's causing cancer. We've got respiratory problems. We've got diabetes because of what is being done here and compromising our health. And so one way to regulate things to make it be balanced and work well for everyone is to restore what America is meant to be, one nation under God in our Constitution with the health and safety of others. If you're willing to compromise that for a job or a revenue, that's why we're failing. It's not to be militarized. It's not to have control by government.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
The Northgate interchange is an incredible feat to have happen. It's about 12 years early at this point, but it does pose some challenges. So the big developer that everybody's hearing about has no intentions of spending any money in the city of Chubbuck. That's our challenge with that. If you drive just north, you have the Sunnyside interchange that's been built. I believe to date, there's 3 car dealerships, there's a gas station on the one side, there's a bank and a couple other establishments in the northwest corner. And other than that, there has not been much development around it. There is no guarantee that Chubbuck is necessarily going to boom or explode. We have 2 major landowners that own the ground on what will be the sides of Siphon Road after that's connected. One of them has indicated they're not necessarily inclined to do much. The other is going to wait and see. In the city of Chubbuck, we're working on trying to find ways to create economic development and show that we're the place where businesses want to come. If you look at Idaho Central Credit Union that chose to stay here and chose to expand here, I think we can make the case that Chubbuck is where some of these people want to be. But we're going to have to work at it. There's no guarantee. I'm excited for the opportunity. The challenges that will come with it will be how do we manage that growth. But as we see it, we'll be able to handle it.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Well, follow up on that. It will have to be clear, concise, and almost detailed planning. Granted, we will have to have some options, and again, you have to provide your near, short-term, and long-term planning that you have to do. And you have to have contingencies again. But you have to make sure that when we do build, and there are people who want to come here and build, and I'm sure there will be, that we give them every opportunity to do so, and that we have that they're ready to build, and that we're ready to make sure that our infrastructure is good to go. And I think that's 80, probably 90% of the problem right there. Is sometimes when we're waiting for this big boom with the interchange, and maybe end up like the panel was saying, it may be a bust though too. But we got to plan accordingly. And I think part of it is also, like I said, we have in the Yellowstone corridor, make sure we're planning those areas for whatever level of construction or whatever level of business we're going to have at those points. Since it is a major artery, it will be more than likely commercial. And then we have to develop other commercial areas as well. I mean, for example, ICC, well, good grief, I'm just having a brain damage moment there, sorry. But anyway, our Idaho State Credit Union has built a huge facility. Is this Idaho Credit, right?
Idaho Central.
Idaho Central, thank you. Idaho Central built that huge building. All right, it's not necessarily in the corridor, but it is within the business district, I think, or we should have a business district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor England?
You know, it's interesting because one of the first things that I've heard as an elected official is we need to do things to provide jobs for our children so they can stay here. In order to do that, you've got to do some things that attract businesses that will bring in those kinds of jobs. Our kids are getting good education and they go out of the places because those kind of jobs aren't available here. I went to my first meeting about the siphon interchange 7.5 years ago. It was scheduled by the state to be done in 2035. It became my goal that day to move that up as much as I could. As the mayor, I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and talk to people from the federal level as to what could happen with this. They agreed that this had federal, state, and local implications, and they'd work with me to see that we could do something with it. We're grateful for this developer who came in because it was through the developers, actually, from both sides of the interstate, that we started getting some wheels with the state, that the state recognized maybe we could do something. We've done something very unique up there. We've created something that's never been done in the state with a public-private partnership that's wonderful. There is no talk of TIF districts on Chubbuck's side. We have not talked TIF. As a matter of fact, that won't happen unless it makes sense for it to happen. We have worked with those landowners closely. They are excited about what's happening there. They recognize their opportunity, and they've recognized and told us that they're willing to work with the city to see these things happen. So again, I believe the growth will come. It will come in a way that will be a blessing. We won't let it happen that fast. And as a matter of fact, some of this is going to be paced by the nature of the projects.
Thank you. This next question will go first to Ms. Taysom. What can the city do to bring the utility bill costs down?
I'm grateful for this question. One, it's against the law to charge a flat water fee. The water belongs to the people. We can have the cost of maintaining the equipment, pumping the water. And if that's still too high, then we go right down to Idaho Power and say, sorry, we're not playing this ballgame. We need to stand up for ourselves. With the sewer, I attended the Pocatello public hearing and the judicial confirmation hearing for this recent upgrade. Totally illegal. They had sent in faulty water samples out of the river, not the effluent coming from the plant. So it's full of phosphorus. The EPA mandated an upgrade instead of, which it was disclosed in the judicial confirmation hearing, that they had taken samples out of the river, not from the effluent. Instead of the judge mandating that be redone and sent in a correct water sample, he approved the $23-something million illegal debt that Pocatello and Chubbuck are stuck with. And same thing with the other development here. And also now with the water development upgrades that are going to be going around the city of Chubbuck. That was approved by a judicial confirmation hearing. You didn't get to vote on the approximate $11 million debt. And so again, it takes we the people to be educated and be a part, because you're being taken for a ride in millions and millions and millions of dollars that you'll never see clear of. These guys will never see clear of. And so that is one thing I'm going to address. We're not the little sister of Pocatello. If we want public water and public sewer, then we do it on our own. But we should have our own wells and our own sewers at our own homes.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
Some of the steps that we've tried to take here in the past is we now have an ordinance that requires that all new subdivisions bring secondary water in. Culinary water is very expensive to go out and buy. Water rights are very expensive to acquire, and they're becoming more and more difficult to have, and there's also possible litigation that comes with them. So any new subdivision that comes into the city of Chubbuck, we're requiring secondary water to be applied. I understand that some people don't like secondary water. There are certain weeds and different things that come with that, but I think if you put about 4 filters in before the line, you can probably mitigate some of the damage. But for around $250 a year, then you can pretty much water as much as you want, as long as the water's in the canal. So hopefully, for those individuals that like really green lawns, you're not having to spend tons of money to make your grass green if you have the ability to use culinary water. One of the other things that we're doing, or that I've asked to be done and looked at, and finally with this major development, I kept asking, why can we not look at reclaiming the water that we put into the Portneuf and use it? We just received a $20 million mandate from the EPA that we had to purify our water more. Well, with this new developer and Pocatello having to look at what they're going to do with the sewer, there's actually been talk that we can look at using that reclaimed water rather than to continue to have our rates go up because of EPA regulations.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Oh,
I'm sorry.
what can the city do to bring the utility bill costs down?
That is something I would like to see. Why is it that our water bill is higher than, say, somebody in Pocatello? And sometimes I haven't found an answer for it yet. I've asked around and nobody's given me an answer. I've even talked to the engineering department, the water engineering department over in Pocatello, and some of them live here in Chubbuck, and they would like to know why their water bill is so much more than Pocatello's is. I mean, granted, if I understand it correctly, we're hooked onto their stuff, and also, and so we're paying huge amounts of money for what? That's what I want to know. The other thing that we may want to look at later on down the road, and Mr. Ellis is perfectly correct on this one, there is a lot of, I would not say to use the word, maybe you'll excuse the term, unsafe water, but we can do a lot about that. And I think there's a lot of options that are out there that we just have to investigate. The other thing that we might want to look at though too is somewhere down the line we're going to have to build our own sewage plants and so forth, because I think we're still hooked onto Pocatello, if I'm correct. So we need our own, and if we're going to grow as big as we are, I think we're projected to grow, we're going to need one of our own. And that's where I say we need the foundations and the infrastructure set up correctly and planned for as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor England?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been, again, a member of the community for a number of years, and I've watched that as the rates have had to go up. I think over the last several years, we've done a real good job of holding rates steady. One of the things that I think that we can all be proud of is that there's been forethought with the rate structure that's in the city of Chubbuck, so that when we do have need, we have an aging infrastructure. And when water isn't available to you at your home because we have pipes that are broken, that becomes a very difficult thing. And so one of the things that we've been addressing is making sure that we're keeping up with that kind of maintenance. There's a cost with that. And one of the reasons that the fees have been a little high in the past is because of the fact that they're putting money away, so that when those things happen, we don't have to come to you and do a bond to have that work done. Now, I don't see any way at this point in time in the city of Chubbuck to lower those, but I do see holding the line, and I believe we've done a very good job of that.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
I know this is a topic that a lot of people are concerned about. One of the things that I've thought about is one of my frustrations working in government is I realize that they're not for-profit entities, but if they were ran more like a small business that, like my own, that hinges upon making good, sound investments, we could get a lot further. Spending money on something just because it's in the budget is ridiculous. When I buy a new piece of equipment, I throw every extra dollar I can at that until it's paid for, so I can avoid debt and interest. Things like the mayor buying a brand new car, even though his last car was just fine because there was money in the budget for it. Those things shouldn't happen until this debt is paid for. We paid for this upgrade. We need to get it paid for. We need to treat it for like a for-profit business. The mayor did talk about what we need to do to attract businesses. What if we were just prosperous? What if we had good roads? What if we had low crime? Wouldn't that be enough? In the worst case scenario, everybody that's still here, in case that doesn't work out, has a better life.
Thank you. This next question will go first to Councilman Ellis. There are quite a few questions around development and growth, so we'll start combining a little bit. This first series of questions is related to following the city's comprehensive plan and ordinances and the current master plan. Do you see a need for reviewing the city's master plan, and are there changes needed? And how will you handle it when citizens are opposed to a development that meets the ordinances, but they do not approve of the development. I did graph two kind of odd ones. I've got about, I don't know, 8 of them here. Let me.
It's a fair question. How about if I answer?
Lump away.
Because I think I know
There you go.
what the concern is. So our comprehensive plan is a guiding document. And from time to time, it needs to be revised and it needs to be changed as things change and as things adapt. With the Northgate interchange, we now have the ability to create a second business district or a second area that will create commercial jobs and commercial growth. Right now, the bulk of our homeowners bear the brunt of our tax burden. So with this new interchange, we now have 2 areas, Yellowstone around the mall, that currently serves more of a retail purpose. We now have a different area that can be business as well. The challenge that comes is that oftentimes you have individuals that come in, and as growth is presented, you have people that are for and people that are against. People that want the growth, people that don't want the growth, people that want it but would prefer to see it differently. As a member of the city council, I'm oftentimes bound to follow what the ordinances are. And sometimes people get upset and people think that we should have made different decisions. One of the prime examples was the cell phone tower that went out by Stewart Park. In its initial location, it was going to go to the school. We had a petition with lots of people that didn't want it there. It could go there, but they didn't meet all the requirements. It ended up going in Stewart Park. People still didn't want it there, but we've been able to adapt and make changes because code and regulation said we couldn't have stopped it.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Well, first and foremost, I believe when we're setting up for development, whether it be like, for example, I live in Constitution, we have a huge amount of development behind our backyard. Bellevue Field, or the Anderson Field, excuse me, is, the property there is being developed, and I think the developers are doing an awesome job. The problem that I have is that when they first initially started that whole project, a lot of citizens from that neighborhood came in here, stated their business, stated their opinion, and were not exactly listened to. And that's the problem with some of the times. Yes, people will get angry with you because you're a councilman and you made the wrong decisions, or for your decisions, period. Okay, we can accept that. Who doesn't, But the problem here is that there is no or very little listening on this side of the fence, if you will. The request that they had at that point in time, it was just a simple request to make a property in R1 it was an R2. The original developer had an R1. The council changed it to an R2. And I believe you said that it didn't matter what it was, whether it was an R1 or an R2. The developer was going to do what they were going to do. I found that a little incredulous. And the problem here is that sometimes we want to do things our way, so to speak, as a council, if you will. And the problem here is that we're not listening. Well, this side of the fence is not listening. There's a lot of people. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Mayor England?
I think probably the quick, easy answer to this is we have ordinances and zoning laws. We have a comprehensive plan. Those have been put in place over a number of years. When you stop and think about what an ordinance is in a city, it's equivalent to any law anywhere else. A duly passed ordinance is a law. You can't decide whether you're going to keep that law or not. It has to be followed. And so again, if we see ordinances in our community that we don't agree with, there's a process for changing it, just like there's a process for changing any other law. But when the zoning ordinances and the comp plan tell us to do a thing a certain way, you got to understand there needs to be a level playing field. We keep talking about how we want development to happen correctly in our city. If you're going to be a developer and come into the city of Chubbuck, don't you want to know what the rules are? Wouldn't you want to be shown what the rules are? And then once you understood those rules and you abided by those rules, would you expect to come into the governing body and be told, no, you can't do that? It becomes difficult, it really does. Now, again, it's not a perfect system. And if we see things in there that need to be tweaked and fixed, there's a process for doing that, and we need to make sure and do it. But oftentimes, elected officials take it on the chin because they obey the law. And they really don't have a choice about that. We can't not obey law.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
I do actually agree with Mayor on this one. But I guess to further the point, I don't think Mr. Hernandez talked about, the city side not listening. And to be honest with you, I don't know that that's necessarily the problem. I don't think that people are talking until it's too late. I mean, something that bothers me is every city council meeting is poorly attended. I mean, even this forum, I mean, I can only pray that people are going to watch this on video later. But people just aren't aware. They're not interested until it's too late, until, the ball is rolling and it's hard to stop these things and they get upset. I would love to make people more aware, more informed, more of a participative, make people feel like they have ownership, because they do. I think that if we can focus on that, bring people to the table ahead of time, educate them, get their input, that we can, like Mayor said, we can change things if they need addressed. But we can't do that without the input. I don't think that we're soliciting the input. We should be. Like I said, the people are our greatest resource, and the city owes it to them to be giving back to them.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
Going back to the Constitution, we the people are the sovereignty of this nation. Things happen because we come together. These people are the public servants that sit up here. They are to answer to your will under the Constitution, and all laws after that are pursuant to the Constitution. In regards to development, one of the new changes to the local development ordinance is that the developer has to acquire all the water rights for that piece of property and then give them to the city. No just compensation back to that developer. They are also now charged impact fees that are massive. Chris Peterson was approved for a 36-lot subdivision. There was a public hearing. They had, I think it was 191 or 200 signatures, plus about 30 people who all said, no, we want R1. The city was pressuring R2. They've got R2, which means more high-density apartments and smaller lots for homes. Chris Peterson wanted R1, bigger lots for families to be able to have space. To me, that's not development. They're trying to jam us into high-density apartments on government utilities and under corporate or government employment, and water control. Again, come to the city council. This is all public record, and it was stated, Mayor England, that this area would be a TIF district. I don't remember if it was city council or a study session or a Chubbuck development thing, but it was stated. Also, Mr. Sheriff, you got approved for this subdivision over here with 11 fourplexes.
Thank you.
Chubbuck Road.
Thank you. And so we are very close to the final question. I'm going to, this will go first to Mr. Hernandez. And just some comments from the audience. There's a lot of discussion about the FBI expansion and the effect that it'll have on Chubbuck, and questions around how much growth is positive. And so giving you that as context for this question. Chubbuck, and again, I can't verify the accuracy of the first statement, so please speak to that as well. Chubbuck has the highest fees and costs for residential development and building in the state of Idaho, so maybe you can comment about your opinion of that. Would you be willing to address this issue to increase the viability and opportunities for development and purchasing homes for families by bringing costs into an equitable range?
That's an interesting question. All right, so obviously with the FBI coming online, they're going to have, if I remember correctly, 100 new jobs over there. I think it's 100, 200, I believe it is, 200 new jobs. All these jobs are probably going to be extremely high-paying jobs. And these folks are probably going to be bussed in, for lack of better words, from other places. And where their standard of living is probably pretty high, they're used to different stuff. As far as housing is, I've talked to some of the developers actually last year, and one of the complaints they had was in getting their permits done in a timely manner. I mean, they had a couple developers say that, and they were just worried that they couldn't get their permits done in time so they can get their houses up and running, up and built. I think part of the problem is, again, making sure that with the new development, again, it's going to have to be controlled, for lack of better words. It's got to be paced carefully, but we also have to make sure that we allow these folks who are building and are coming in the opportunity to do it correctly and quickly and efficiently as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor England?
Okay, I want to address the high building costs first. We've had several come into the office and complain that we have the highest building costs in the state. We've asked for verification for that, have yet to find it. And my own experience in doing some of the research I've done is it doesn't bear out to be the case. We have some costs that are going up at this point in time, and it has to do with our sewer interceptor that has to be paid back. When that went in, the intent was that as people built, that would pay for it. Well, as soon as they got it in, building stopped. And so we all know that we've been paying a fee in our monthly bill to pay that debt. And so my question would be, do we lower that for developers so that we keep the fee on all of our citizens? And there has to be a compromise somewhere. And my attitude is, I've sat on that committee where they decided what those new fees needed to be. And it was a scientific study. They didn't do it willy-nilly, and it's put in place for a reason. We continue to have building in the city, so I don't think we've outpriced ourselves at this point in time. We'll keep a pulse on that. Let me quickly talk about the FBI. What a blessing they're going to be to us. True, it's in Pocatello. It's right on our border. We already have those folks walking across the street on their breaks to shop at the mall and to buy at those new stores that have developed there. And they're going to bring in 350 new jobs with the potential of another 350 after that. They've already hired 350. A lot of people don't recognize their existing building, got the top part of it finished, and they've brought in 350 people right now. Good jobs, good people that we'll love to have in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
I guess you could take the FBI and, I think that there are some positives with that, but you could take the FBI and really insert any big business name in there. These are businesses, the government, they have budget constraints, they're not dumb. They realize that this is a cheap place to do business as it stands. I don't know if anybody's shopped real estate over on the East Coast, in Virginia area and such, but it's very expensive. It makes sense for the government to move that operation here. This Northgate interchange, it makes sense. If I'm a big corporation like Adobe, I'm not going to pay programmers down in Salt Lake $120,000 average salary when I can pay people $80 here. The bottom line, it's a business decision. With that comes advantages and disadvantages. And again, I keep going back to it, but if we've got to focus on the prosperity aspect of the people that are already here before we get too excited about anybody coming in. Otherwise we'll have, the problems that come with that wild growth, like Utah 20 years ago. A starter home, I bought my first house when I was going to college for $155,000 down there, so I don't have to pay rent. I couldn't do that today. That same house is over $250,000 because Utah was one of those last bastions of cheap labor force and cheap land. And that's 2 hours down the road, and we're the last people now. It's Idaho.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
I am concerned why we need more police right here, especially government-controlled police. I have an ex-brother-in-law that works there in an ex-bishop, and I'm for development, but I'm very concerned about why that's here, with what's going on here. There's a lot of militarization going on. There's the city of Pocatello approved a 30-acre readiness site out at the airport for our National Guard 2 years ago, and against constitutional law that can only be done through the legislature. There's other issues that concern me in regards to the development fees. Our developers are here to do good. They're the builders of any town. When you take them down because they can't afford fees, they leave. As I mentioned, they're paying impact fees, and they said at the city level that that's so that we can pay for more fire, police, and street people. I said that's the homeowner's job that buys that lot and builds that house. It's not the developer's responsibility. They have inspection fees, permit fees, fire fees, abatement fees, license fees, city, county, and state, roadway fees if they're working in the roadways or in their sidewalks. Take Cable One, or those guys. Some of those guys are paying 3 different times for the same thing. That's why your costs go up. Water, sewer, sanitation, fiber optics. We even fund part of Pocatello Transit. The city here approved $40,000 to Jackson Landscaping down in Utah to do a park study here. Said, how about having a town hall?
Thank you. And a final response on this, Councilman Ellis?
With the FBI, it's going to hopefully create other opportunities for businesses that want to come in. Hopefully Chubbuck will have that ability to attract them here. The city of Chubbuck has just installed fiber optics throughout the city. High-tech jobs. We're moving away from agriculture, the small farms. Small farms generally don't pencil out. So you see larger and larger farms. A lot of our children are getting into these high-tech jobs, and that's what they're looking for. The FBI brings that. I think Chubbuck will be able to position itself to do that. As far as the growth, some of that means that perhaps maybe our children won't leave, or maybe our kids will come back home. Not everybody's coming from California. Some of those individuals, I've got a neighbor that's just at the other end of my subdivision. They came from California, but if you ask them where they grew up in Soda Springs, and they were coming back home to Idaho, and they had the opportunity and they took it. So I think growth is good, but it has to be managed, and I think we can preserve our quality of life. I do disagree with the mayor. Our fees are the highest by the time you put it all together, but I build homes, and I recognize that it costs money to add sewer lines. And so I would just ask that we look at that and we be diligent on what the actual costs are. I do believe there's some room to move those fees down, but much to the chagrin of some of the people in my industry, I don't think I would lower them to the extent that they would ask me to.
Thank you. The final question will go first to Mayor England. Do you feel the Bannock County bond election will help our community address behavioral health and substance abuse issues? And how could you support this as an elected official?
That certainly is the intent of what has been taking place. I've had the opportunity to sit on a committee that's been studying this and been deciding what needs to happen. We have two big challenges there. One is we have a jail that's overcrowded. There's no debate about that. If you don't know that, you ought to get out there and see what's happening. They tell us that it's only a matter of time and we're going to end up with a judicial mandate to do things. At that point, you do what a judge tells you to do. You don't get any choice whatsoever. Now, there are legitimate concerns there. We were told a number of years ago when we built a new jail that it was much more than we needed to have, that it would make money, and that we'd put that money away and be ready for these expansions. That didn't happen. I don't know whose feet need to be held to the fire, but that certainly is a legitimate concern at this point in time. It's a question that's being asked now. If we approve this, what's going to happen in 10 and 15 years when we have needs again? Are we planning for that? Now, the first portion of that question is really important. There's a lot of people in that jail that do not belong there. They're there because of mental health issues and because of substance use issues, that if we had a process where we could help them, they wouldn't be in jail, and hopefully they'd take that second chance and become productive citizens with you and me. We need to make sure we're looking at that. Now, I'm not here to tell anybody else how to vote. I need to study this out and decide my own conscience. But I would just encourage each of you to study it out, make sure you understand what you're being asked to do, and then vote the way you feel the very best to do. I would suggest you make sure and get behind something to do with this crisis center, though. That's something that this community really does need.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
First, speaking to the jail, my only hesitation is that I don't believe in Band-Aid projects. I think that this bond is important, and for lack of any better idea right now, it needs to happen because a good problem to have would be empty jail cells. Those are valuable. If we can be the ones that are planning and being smarter about it in this county, some of our neighbors might not be, and we could benefit from that because then we could flip the script and we could be charging them for bed space. So doing it right up front, planning way into the future is probably the most advantageous rather than doing it piecemeal. In regard to the mental health issue, it is definitely a problem. I have no disagreements there. I've seen that firsthand. My only concern is, though, it's another typical government as usual project where it's like, well, let's just pass this bond, we'll get money up front, then we'll worry about funding and staffing and paying for this thing over the years to come, which I don't necessarily agree with, but like I said, it is a jumping off point. It is something that has been needed for a really long time.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
I'm opposed to the bond. I've been in Bannock County Jail as an inmate. I've also been in mental health hospitals as an inmate. They're both locked down, same kind of facilities. The same populations existed in both. The number one was those who had addictions, whether it was drugs, alcohol, porn, satanic violent media. That was the causes. The second was those who had been abused or were abusers. And the third was those who were immoral, usually the GLBTQs. The fourth were those who have literally destroyed their ability to function in reality due to media, or were practicing witchcraft. I'm being sincere and honest. Check yourself in either one and talk to the people there. Mental health is a big fat lying scam. If you remove the cause that puts them in that position, i.e. addiction, i.e. abuse, i.e. media, those things resolve out. Get them a healthy diet, get them in a healthy environment. I mean, if you want to stop the problem, get children out hiking in the mountains, shut off the media that they're jamming down their throat that's full of violence and satanic images, and then medicating them for their behavior problems where they're being fed big ag GMO toxic food that gives them all cancer. I've been in the jail, they misused grossly. Sheriff Department funds, get a copy of the budget. I did, to see where that money was really going. Again, the answer to this whole thing is address honestly and stop the cause of what's putting people there.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis?
I think the big concern is the unkept promises from the last time that there was a jail expansion. The thing that I've noticed differently, at least at this time, is there's an ownership of that. There's an acknowledgement that there were promises that were made and that they were unkept, and that it needs to be different this time around. I think some of the things that I would encourage people to look at and that I'm still looking at, I'm trying to verify the numbers, I'm talking with individuals that are within the law enforcement area. Would it be beneficial to have treatment beds? Would it be beneficial to have the crisis center? How will that impact? Will we see a decrease in crime? And then really trying to figure out, is that going to do it? There are other areas that have done these. We should be able to look at them, we should be able to study them, we should be able to see, has there been an actual decrease? In the county's budget, there's indigent care and certain things that have to be paid for, and it's a line item that's going to get paid for one way or the other. And to some extent, I think these are some of the costs that individuals within the county are already incurring, and we probably need to look at those and see if that money were able to be transferred and we had treatment centers and crisis prevention, would we see things go down?
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Well, it's actually one of the issues that's been around for quite a while. If you ever toured the Bannock County Jail, it's actually deteriorating. There's a lot of maintenance issues that were not taken care of, and it is a 20-plus-year-old facility. I do think the bond's a good idea, but like Mr. Gardner said, it shouldn't be a patchwork. Either do it correctly or don't do it at all. Plus, on the other part of it is you also having the crisis center. I think the crisis center is a good idea because a lot of these folks, after taking this tour that I did, Sheriff Nielsen said, a lot of these guys are not criminals. Yes, they have addictions, they have emotional problems. Locking them up in a jail is not going to do them any good. Instead of, because most of the time when they do have somebody with these kind of tendencies, they have to send them either to the hospital, which costs $150 a night just to house them there, or we can have our own facility. And this facility, the crisis center they were talking about, I'm talking to some other folks here in town, is going to be, again, like the hospital, like the Port Neuf Wellness Center, and like the new second interchange. All combination of government and civilian, government and private industries working together to help these folks out. And that's what you're going to have with the crisis center as well, which you need. You need that kind of, because there will be inpatient and outpatient care there as well. And a lot of the civilian, the private industries, private care facilities will help out with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have 2-minute concluding remarks from each of the candidates. The first to go will be mayoral candidate Hank Gardner.
Thank you. As I think about the potential that we have as a community, I can't help but wonder why we're not trying to do more to involve the people and help the people. If if I were to run again and fast forward 4 years, which I wouldn't, I can afford to take a 4-year detour out of my life to maybe help get things back on track. But I would measure my success by how full this room was. And I'd get people used to coming and used to participating by doing things like offering, debt counseling or budgeting classes or just all types of, there's no shortage of willing people. I talked to Kermit Morrison, right after he dropped out, and he more or less said that, the spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak. And I think that guys like him could be utilized. He has a willingness to serve, but maybe in a different capacity. I would love to take him and put him as like the chairman of community organization. I think that there's a lot of potential for involving people like that, where we could go and organize the people to help people who, there's a lot of, I've heard a lot of complaints about the ordinance enforcement. Some people are destitute, they don't have the physical, they don't have the financial means of taking care of some of these issues. I would love to have an organization, community-based, that they could petition for some possible aid and help. And then those who are just unwilling to play ball, maybe the funds received from those ordinance violations could fund that. And get those type of people involved in our community, steering all the efforts back into the people, again, our best resource.
Thank you. Ms. Taysom?
I'm always hearing, when I bring up this, we have to address and stop the causes. I've been standing against alcohol since I was 5. I had 2 alcoholic uncles. My brother struggles with it. Of those 2 uncles, 8 of their children, 7 were alcoholics, then drugs, 2 died of overdose. Until we're ready to be honest, literally, we have to address the truth here. You have a right to sell alcohol at your public business. You have a right to sell pornography. You have a right to sell state-owned and produced lotteries that are leading people to end up in Whitaker trailers or in our jail or in our mental health hospitals under pain management, medication management, social nonprofit organization management. We're becoming a managed, social, communist, addicted, diseased population who have nothing. So we have a decision to make. We were established by God as one nation under God and indivisible and in accordance with true constitutional law. And all laws after that are pursuant thereof. Nothing else. It's not happening anymore. You, we the people, have to choose. It's a choice. That's a liberty. Until your choice infringes on the rights of others. When I see little children at Jackson's at midnight buying junk food with a Quest card, one in stocking feet, or a little 5-year-old sitting in the back of their parents' car at midnight while the parents are buying 2 $20 lottery tickets that both lose, and then show up at Exxon the next morning with the 4 children, the oldest being 10, the youngest a baby, buying junk food, and the dad wanting another lottery ticket, and the children are poorly dressed. Guess what? Who's paying for that Quest card? What's that little child going to end up? Choice is yours. God won't be mocked. We're going to be standing in front of Him and our children and every dead combat soldier to give an accounting. I want to look them in the eye. In the name of Jesus the Christ, I call on you too.
Thank you. And now for the final remarks from our 2 candidates for City Council Seat 2, Councilman Josh Ellis.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this, and thank you for sitting through this. I don't know if any of the rest of you are feeling warm like I am. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have increased the air conditioning a little. But thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to serve on the City Council, and I ask for your vote to continue to work for you. I think if you look at the last 4 years and you look at the things and the improvement that you've seen along the Yellowstone corridor, along our diverging diamond of death, as sometimes it's called, the Northgate interchange is going to be great. I think a lot of people are going to avoid it now. They're going to go up Siphon. I think if you look at Stewart Park, I think if you look at the road maintenance program, I think there's been a lot of great things that we've been able to accomplish. And there's a lot more work that still needs to be done. I'm very passionate about the city of Chubbuck. I've chosen to live here. I've chosen to raise my family here. I'm willing to work for you, and I'm willing to push hard. Chubbuck has to fight to not be the small city next to the city of Pocatello. I'm that individual that I think you would want to represent you and represent your interests as we go after businesses, as we look at ways to improve our services, as we look at ways to hold our tax levy flat. I can't promise you that taxes are going to go down. The city's budget is much like yours. Everything seems to cost more every year. But what I am confident of is that we have a great place to live. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to sell a house of a dear friend who ended up moving to what I will call the state of Ada when Simplot closed down. He was an engineer and he had a Six Sigma certification, and that's where his employment took him. We used to ski all the time at Pebble Creek together. We no longer have that opportunity. I want to fight for being and building the city of Chubbuck so we can continue to stay here and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council Seat 2 candidate Roger Hernandez.
Well, again, thank you all for showing up. I know it's a long, drawn-out process here we've had, and I'm sure a lot of you is just, I want to go home. But I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters again, one more time, for their help. I mean, this is actually a phenomenal forum. I always like the way they put it on the forum. My sister once said about me that I have a spirit of service, and I do. I've served almost every job that I've ever had. I was serving somebody, whether it was, like I said, I retired from the military 4 years ago. I've worked for, actually, in between breaks in service, I worked for the Department of Education, Department of Health and Welfare, the child support side of the house. For those of you who are single and have to pay child support, you know what kind of deal that is. So, and also, one of the things I came back to service because I was asked to. Actually, I was going to school at ISU at the time, and a friend of mine asked me to apply to come back to the Guard full time. And I said, okay. And actually retired after that. And I live here in Chubbuck because I love Chubbuck. It's a wonderful place. I grew up in the Aberdeen area, and it reminds me of Aberdeen. I love that small hometown feel. I really do. But again, we have progress occurring, and that needs to be managed in a very well concerted effort. Yes, we're going to have a lot of people coming in, hopefully, provided we don't have a boom or a bust on the Siphon interchange like Sunnyside was, or at least it's not a bust so much, but it's slow. I think we can do better, and we should do better. Managing our people, like for example, we are going to have a huge increase in our services. As people come in, demand more services, our officers, our firemen, again, part of this is going to have to manage our people as well and making sure we retain our good people. And I think I'm the guy capable of doing that, or helping be part of the team to do that. I know I can. I've worked with teams before, and I think we can do it. I think we can manage this a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final concluding remarks for the mayoral race, Mayor Kevin England.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you to the league. It's a great sponsorship of a thing like this, and it's good for the community to get together and have these experiences. I also hope that many take the opportunity to do this and see the things that we talked about tonight. They're important to our community. They really are. I want to say kudos to each one of these candidates. It takes a lot to put your name out there and to run for a public office, and I congratulate them for being willing to do that. Being part of the public discussion is a big, big part of this. It gives you an opportunity to have a platform, at least for a period of time, where you can talk about ideas that you think are really important. And I think that that's vital. Our community does need to come together and needs to reach out to one another in true concern, recognizing the opportunities that we have in front of us. I also have given my life as a life of service my whole life. I love to serve, and I served long before I was on the Chubbuck City Council. The reason I decided to do it at this level at that point in time is because I had more time once my family was raised. While I was raising a family and running my own business, time was of the essence. I didn't have a lot of it. The other thing that I want to say is that, I want to acknowledge my wife and the support that she gives me. I could not do this without her. We've raised our family. Our family's not around. We have a few that are still here, but they're all they've flown the nest, so to speak. Well, because of that, as you elect Mayor Kevin England, you're getting a twofer. She serves this community in wonderful ways, and most of the time behind the scenes, it doesn't get seen. Anybody who has been in this kind of an office knows that their spouse is absolutely vital to their success and what they're doing, and I express my gratitude for her. I'm thankful to each one of you I see the people that are here, your givers, your servers. I recognize that, and I'm grateful for that. One of the things that makes this community that we live in so great is that you just show the need and people step up and do the work. I found out in my first few years that most of the work happens behind the scenes with people that never get the limelight. I'm grateful for them.
Thank you. And thank you all for your participation, audience and candidates. The last day to pre-register to vote is October 13th, and Idaho does allow same-day registration. So if you go to the polls, remember to bring either personal, your photo ID, government issued, or you can sign a personal identification affidavit. Early walk-in voting is happening from now through Friday, November 3rd. At the, next to the Bannock County Courthouse at 141 North 6th Street, and that is from 9 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. October 27th is the last day for an application for the mail-in absentee ballot. And please vote on Tuesday, November 7th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There is information about the Jail and Behavioral Health Crisis Center Town Hall event on the table up here. You can also get information up here and on Facebook to get involved in the League of Women Voters. And we again thank you. I hope you leave better informed, and we're very grateful for your participation. Have a good night.